Now we're going to have Patty Greer, who is going to be talking about her work with the crop circles. Now, I began investigating crop circles in 1992, so I've been doing it a long time, but I stopped because we got involved in the other things. But I was involved in the early days with all the other investigators over there. But I find them very fascinating. And Patty Greer, you said you began in 2002. Is that what you said? You started 2002 with your investigations? 2006 with her investigations over there. And she has made 5 films dealing with her investigations with the crop circles. And she's won several awards as with the different conferences, like the one in Scottsdale, who have a film festival, and they give awards for the best pictures. So she's going to be talking about her work with the circles and her films that she's done. Okay. So it's Patty Greer. Okay.
Thank you. Okay. All right. It's wonderful to be here. She said Patty Greer, and they call me the crappie girl in England. Actually, they usually call me the girl in the green wellies because of my boots. Dolores is correct. I started in 2006 playing in the crop circles, but I want to give you a brief outline because back then I didn't really know why I was there or what all these things were that were happening in my life. So I'm going to start a little bit earlier and then go into the crop circle story. In 2001, I was playing a lot of music. I played harp, piano. Check. Okay, there we go. Are we shorting out? All right. So in 2001, which is what I'm going to go back to, I was playing music. I was recording in a studio and dating the man that owned the studio. And I only talk about this because I realized in 2010 that that was the first time that I had an experience with extraterrestrials. I had this house up in the mountains, and in the house, I didn't notice at the time that I had these orbs that were everywhere. And when I look at the photos back then, I realize that in all my rooms, when I look at the photos, these orbs happen to be everywhere. So I had this interesting person in my life that woke up one morning and he was really upset. He said, "Do you remember what you said in your sleep last night?" And I was completely clueless. And he said that I woke him up by saying, "It's not what you see, it's what you don't see." I said, "Wow, cool dream. Can I get up now?" He said, "No, that's not all. Then you said, it's not who you know, it's who you really are." Which was really interesting because I kind of thought that he was having a dream. But he said, "Oh, that's not all. Then you got me awake and I was laying there and I couldn't get back to sleep. And all of a sudden I saw these headlights go around the back side of the house, but I knew that it's a mountain there. There's no way a car could go back there, and so I started getting a little concerned. And he said the first light came through the wall in your bedroom and circled the ceiling and went out the left living room window. I just thought, wow, cool dream. And he got really upset, grabbed my wrist even harder and said, "It wasn't a dream. I know what I saw. There was a ball of light in your bedroom circling the ceiling, and I was so upset by it that I shook you and you wouldn't wake up." So I thought, well, I still thought he was dreaming. But then he grabbed me harder and he said the second ball of light came through the wall, and it was white on the outside, and when it came through the wall, it was bright green, like those glow sticks that you break at night. He said this one really upset him, and it was going around the bedroom, and he shook me so hard that the headboard was hitting the wall, and I wouldn't wake up. And needless to say, it was the last time he dated me. So off he went, really upset with me that not only do I hand feed deer and hand feed foxes at this house in the mountains, but also these beings he thought was part of my elemental kingdom up there, and he was done with it. So I took this with me, and for 6 years I said, why him, not me? Why did he get this experience? And why couldn't I wake up? And it wasn't until 2010 when I had a regression with Mary Rodwell from Australia that she said, girl, you were taken. And it didn't cross my mind until that day. So I guess it was a more interesting experience than I had any idea. So in 2004, a few years after this happened, I decided, because I was on this major health kick, to do something intelligent for my body, which was to get all the mercury fillings out of my teeth. And I did it, but I went to the wrong dentist, and while I was asleep on nitrous, he put new mercury fillings in and poisoned me severely. So I had 7 years of being completely mercury toxic, and I couldn't do anything about it. The doctors in this country aren't allowed to tell us it's mercury or fracking fluids, and so they gave me the wrong blood test for 7 years, and the mercury just went more and more into my body. But now that I'm on the other side, because I did get the right test in 2010, I detoxed the mercury fillings out, I realize now how important that heavy metal nature must have been in me to get me this accessible to the Circlemakers. And you'll understand this as we go into the program. So after a few years of all the doctors scratching their head and not being able to tell me the truth, I went to every kind of healer, and none of them could do anything other than say, I've done everything I can. There's something inside you coming out. And because I was a harpist and a pianist, it took my fingertips. And all of you that come to meet me, you'll go to shake my hand, but I can't shake because I've got these Band-Aids still. But I'm on the other side of it. And I'm only telling you this because I think that the mercury, the metals, turned me into some kind of a transmitter that helped me make these movies. Because when I gave up on doctors, I took myself to the crop circles in Wiltshire, England, in my desperation to heal. I didn't figure there was anything that was working here, so I was going to try something else, which was outer planetary. If there was anything over there, I was going to find it. So this is the center of the crop circle phenomenon. It's called Wiltshire, England, and this is the Avebury Stone Circle, which is the oldest stone circle in all of Europe. And you can see the border of it is, there's a moat around it, but the interesting thing about the reason that the Avebury Stone Circle happens to be the epicenter of more crop circles documented than anywhere else in the world is because 3 underground streams meet underneath this stone circle, and it's sitting in the middle of more sacred sites than probably anywhere else on the planet. And every summer, at the end of the season of crop circling, we lay out the ley line map. And a ley line map looks like a spider web. It's all the direct lines between sacred sites. And the area that really gets a lot of stone circles and crop circles, is between Stonehenge, Glastonbury, and the Avebury Stone Circle sitting in the middle. So when we look at this ley line map at the end of the year and we take push pins and stick them in every location of every crop circle, not only is 96 or 7% of the crop circle sitting on a ley line, but most of them are sitting on a node, which is a crossing of 2 ley lines. So you've got a really high-powered spiritual energy. And over there, it's not spiritual like Unity Church. It's thousands of years old that people have walked across Europe to do sacred ceremony in the Avebury Stone Circle, or Silbury Hill, which is a sacred mound not far away, always gets hit with crop circles. So this area, when we put the push pins on and we realize they're all sitting over sacred sites, when we look at the around the world crop circles, 96 or 7% of them happen to be sitting also over an aquifer. So these are the 2 things that are in the high 90 percentiles of how to find crop circles and why they're happening in particular places. Lots of water and lots of sacred sites. So it seems like my program got a little mixed up. This is more from the house where I was feeding all the animals. These are all my little friends. But I spent all my time in the yard with these guys, hand feeding them, and that's when those balls of light came in. I was really quite enhancing the energy there. So I get to England, and I start going in these crop circles, and I realized that if I would lay down in them, that there was a whole lot more juju. And when you sit on the outside of a crop circle and then you move to the center, you can really feel the difference. And the hair on my arms would rise up about 10, 20 feet before even getting in the crop circle. I would, like, you could see it visibly. You could feel your body just light up, tingles on top of your head. And the man that I took with me a couple years in a row, he said, I'm not going to pretend anything. So I was like, you don't have to impress me. So we're walking in the tram line. This is a tram line. Oh, pointer. The tram line where the tractors drive. And so we'd be walking in the tram lines, and all of a sudden, bang, my body would light up, and I'd say, we're close. I can feel it. And then I got real quiet when I had two people walking behind me, and ooh, I could feel it. Just look at my arms, and I just looked over my shoulder. My boyfriend was like this. I mean, watching the hairs dance on his arm, and I looked back at the lady behind him, and she's like this. So, I mean, it's really something that does happen to, it would happen to most of you, most likely because we're sensitive people. So I started in 2006 in my desperation to heal, but it was a really, really wet summer, so it was hard to lay down. This is the first crop circle I went in, and the only reason I'm posting it is because of what happened. I had my daughter with me, so I had to behave. I had to, be relatively appropriate. We walk in this crop circle, and we get in the middle, and it was absolutely beautiful. I'd never seen anything like it. And we lit up in our feeling before we got in there. And as soon as we got in the crop circle, it was just perfect, not a hair out of place. Nobody had been in it. It was really divine. So we're walking around the perimeter, and all of a sudden, we get to this side, and right in the middle, it was hacked. It was like everything was flawless, not a hair out of place. But in this one area, it looked like somebody had taken a hacksaw and chopped it up. So it was perfect everywhere, but flawed in this one zone. And I look over my shoulder, and this lady who turned out to be the archdruidess of Stonehenge was in the formation with us. And I'm running my pendulum because it's my first crop circle. I'm like, is this real? And what I got was that it was real, and some human had hacked it up. And I looked over, and there she is running her pendulum. So I said, what'd you get? And we both agreed that it was a real crop circle that somebody had hacked up. And because it was really rainy and the wheat was up to our hips, our pants were soaked, and it was starting to get a little cold, so my daughter said, Mom, I really want to go to the car. And there was a lady out there, so I said, go. So I just need a few more minutes in the crop circle. So the Wiccan and I were, and I heard a man yelling that came echoing across the wheat. So I see him yelling at my daughter, so I figured I better get out there. So I flew across the wheat, and by the time I got there, thank God I was late because my daughter was much quicker than me. The farmer is yelling, didn't you see the no trespassing sign? What are you doing on my land? I could shoot you. And I'm trying to get there quickly, and my daughter, thank God, said, no entiendo inglés, lo siento mucho. I was so delighted. I thought, I wish I could have come up with that. Thank God I was late. So I show up and I go, "Ay problema? ¿Qué pasó?" And here comes the witch that I didn't know, and she's like speaking Spanish. So it was awesome. But the man that was yelling realized the three of us no entiendo inglés. He can't yell at us anymore. We don't care. We don't understand. And what did he have? This big white thing across his shirt, a strap that held a hacksaw. So that's the first farmer I met. That's a really big message. Here I am 8 years later, realizing 7 years later, that some of the farmers feel that way. They don't want people on their land, so what do? They try to wreck the crop circle, and they think that that's going to keep us out. So that was an interesting first lesson in my first crop circle. That's pretty much how that's me pretty much day after day, all day long. I just find a circle, get to the middle, lay down, and close my eyes. These are my friends. Huh? Yeah. Yeah, right? Well, anyway, I mean, being in the circle, standing up is one thing, laying down, you're closer to the land, closer to the energy, and, you know, everybody's different, but for me, that's the way I like it. So then I started realizing that they're really interesting on the ground, but if you get up in the air, you can see the formation. On the ground, what you see is the wheat and the lay and the feel and the hair standing up on your arm, but when you start flying over them, you see the full pattern. And everybody looking at a crop circle will, depending on your energy field, your vibration, you will see something different than the person standing next to you. So when I sit with a group of researchers, and we all have done it for years, and I'll put a photo in the middle, all 6 of us will see something different, and all 6 of us are correct because you get what you need from the crop circles. And the reason that they're giving it to us in art, or binary code, or pictograms, is because it's a language that everybody understands. It's not some kind of, you know, thing we're sending out or thing we're sending back. They're laying it in a field of wheat for 2 to 3 months at a time, knowing that until the farmer mows it down, we're going to be seeing the message. And they count on crazy people like me to get in these little planes and fly and film them. Now, when I say crazy, this little plane, when I first started flying, the pilot said, "Door on or door off." I was like, "You're kidding, right?" He said, "Well, the professionals, blah, blah." And I was like, "Oh, God, door off." Ugh. So I've got this big movie camera. I've got a little one on my wrist. And he says, everything needs to be attached and strapped down. So now I've got it like hanging on a thing, a jacket tied to the front. And it was really pretty interesting. Everything I had was tied to me. So now we're in this plane, and we're flying over the formations, and the first couple loops I film with the big movie camera, and then he says, "Do you want to do one more loop?" And I said, "Yeah, I need to do some stills." So he always would say, "Look at me." And I'd say, "Why do you tell me to look at you?" And he says, "Trust me, look at me." So I'd look at him, and there we are again, wow, you know, ready for a new circle. But the one time I didn't look at him, it was because he's a majorly excellent pilot who cuts it really sharp. When you finish doing the loop, a lot of the lesser pilots that want you to take more time and pay for more time will fly way away and then come back. This guy tips the plane and really banks it tight. So when I did look at him, I was like, "Why are you saying, ah?" I never did it again. Yeah. So here's one of my favorites of all time, the doorway. Here's another farmer's story, and you probably know this one. This was such a magnificent formation, but the farmer didn't want people on his land. I mean, look at this. This is in barley, wet, supple barley that blows in the wind. How they got it to lay down where you can actually see shading and dimension. I mean, look at the shading. And a lot of the crop circles have shading in their formations where you just say, how did they know to do that? It's flawless. But the farmer decided he didn't want us there, so the second morning it was mowed out. It was a big empty circle, a big white empty circle. So luckily, some of us flew, took photos, took film, and we got this one on film. Is really, really stunning. This one is arrived at Milk Hill in 2001, 409 circles. So when you walk into the first circle, you come in the tram line, you get in this crop circle, it is so amazing that you don't realize there's 408 other formations. Excuse me a second. This is not working.
It's even better. You leave that one in.
Oh, great. I'm going to be full of wires.
Right. You're wired.
I'm wired. All right, let's see if this works better. Clear as a bell. Excuse all the stuff hanging. All right, so this one in Mill Hill 2001 was absolutely amazing. But the most amazing thing is when you're in a crop circle.
Do you have a handheld mic?
Time out. I'm like wired all over the place. Really fun.
Testing.
Thank you. You know, they always do this to me. They make me work really hard for it, but the last time this happened where they really played games with the technical, I ended up bringing posters that I pointed to. And I was like, can't wreck that. So, now I got both hands busy. So the amazing thing about this one is that when you walk in the tram line and you're in this circle, you think it's the only one. I mean, it is so perfect and so huge and has a magnificent centerpiece. And then all of a sudden you realize that there's a little walk path. Oh my God, there's another circle. And you think it's like two beautiful circles. And then when you continue and continue, you have no idea what you're in. You're just constantly in circles and you don't want to miss any of them. But how can you even find them all? They're all connected. You don't know where you've been. It's like being in a maze. And I thought this one was one of the most stellar. Mill Hill, 409, the Julia set. Sacred geometry, really magnificent. Does that remind you of the Mayan calendar? Now that's brittle, dry wheat. So when humans walk in them, you know, if you can't be sensitive to it and you look at the photo, you realize, here we go again with the shading. And as the day changes, the shading changes. So they're giving us a lot of messages. This is like one of my all-time favorites. 3 hours of night, 3 hours of darkness in England. I don't think it's humanly possible. But I love it that Doug and Dave claim to have made all the crop circles in the 80s and 90s. I think they might still be claiming that they made all the crop circles today, except one of them's been dead almost 20 years. Now, if in fact they did make them in the 80s or 90s, they must have been traveling at the speed of light because they made 3 in England one night, 1 in Italy, 1 in France, and 1 in Croatia. So if Doug and Dave really made them all, hats off. They're E.T. This one. I mean, and this is the walkway in. It takes a minute to realize that this was their intention of bringing you into this amazing image. But what's hard to appreciate is these thin little lines. Now, when that's brittle wheat, if you step on it, you're going to break it. How they did these skinny little lines that I have to walk sideways to get through. Crop circle etiquette, you don't want to wreck the pattern. This one I just think is completely phenomenal because of how brittle the wheat was. Now here, in 2009, we had 2 of these. I don't know if any of you are into these sacred ancient languages, but it took us a while to decipher that this was an ancient language that has not been seen in hundreds of years. And in case you didn't believe it, they gave us another one. 1,500 feet long. And they did it in 3 different nights, 3 different phases. The first phase was just the Kokopelli, and we thought, oh, that's cool. And then a few days later, there was this ancient language, and everybody was silenced by it because when somebody recognized what it was something that really hasn't been seen in hundreds of years. And then they extended it to 1,500 feet. And again, brittle, dry wheat. Here's how you can tell if a crop circle, usually tell if one is real or human-made. And when I say real, I mean they're making them. The human-made ones, people are making them. So when people make them with boards and ropes and a headlamp and 3 hours of darkness, they've probably come and staked it out the day before, but a lot of the advanced researchers are saying that they've been divinely guided anyway. If humans are laying down beautiful ones, they probably had a dream and got the pattern a few nights before or a month before, and it took them that long to bring it into the third dimension to throw it down in a field. When they are non-human, this is what we see. And these are called bent nodes or blown nodes. And what happens is some form of intense heat hits the formation. You've got water underneath in the aquifer, and whatever it is that these ETs are putting into the land and into the water below it is creating these perfect patterns. And when you go crawling around the crop circle, in the center, in the exterior, and you start digging in the wheat, you will find that the wheat is not broken. And when you go into a human-made one, you'll find that all the wheat is broken at the bend. These were heated by something, and the only thing that scientists have been able to compare it to is a microwave burst of heat, because it does something from the inside which changes all the elemental nature of the wheat. And the interesting thing is that they find that it has far better nutritional value than the wheat that didn't get hit by a crop circle. So it does enhance the wheat, and the next year it tends to grow a healthier crop. The only time the farmer loses all the wheat from a crop circle is if it's a really wet summer, and the wheat is on the ground, people step on it, and then it gets moldy. But short of a really wet summer and people walking on it and molding out the farmer's wheat, they can still harvest all their wheat. And there were a few years where the farmers got smart enough to make crop circle bread and crop circle beer. It was really impressive. So this is how you can tell as the bent, not broken nodes. Now here's an interesting one. Looks kind of basic, boring, but it is the only crop circle that somebody actually filmed being made. And this is one of the biggest pieces in my work now. I got permission to use the famous footage of the Oliver's Castle crop circle, where you guys have probably all seen it. You watch the balls of light, they circle a standing field of wheat, and bang, the field goes down in a matter of seconds. How many of you have seen that? All right, a lot of people have. So the interesting thing is, this is the formation that happened. So I got permission to use that footage from Janet Osebard and Bert Janssen's movie that some of you have seen. It's called Contact. And they had the footage and gave me permission to bring it home. So I didn't go to England to make movies. I went there to heal my hands, but once I got taken in the crop circle, I totally forgot about my hands. I just stuck gloves on and quit caring. I was just so amazed every day. So I started taking a ridiculous amount of photos. But it wasn't until a particular day in 2007 when I went back without my daughter. And I spent 9 weeks laying in crop circles 2 years in a row, 2007 and 2008. So they knew that I was back and on a mission. And all it was to heal, but they had something else in mind. So I laid down in a crop circle, my second one in 2007, and I passed out. When I woke up, I was laying there on my back, and there was all these mosquitoes circling over my nose like a little vortex, and I was sweeping them away with my hand, and as soon as they all left, I was still seeing something in the sky that I'd never seen before, which I know today is plasma. And whatever happened to me when I passed out, when I woke up, I could see plasma energy. I don't even want to call it energy. They're like little plasma beings, but they move quickly and they dart. And if I took you guys outside, you would be able to see them. I never knew to look. And the first time I was shown them was in a crop circle. So it was a parallel universe that all of a sudden was really appearing in my eyes. And in every crop circle, I thought it was just in England in the crop circles, but back in Denver, back in Boulder, I see them all the time. So it's not really specifically in England. And in one of the crop circles, when I was looking at these things, I actually saw, and I wrote it down, I sketched a picture, that there were egg sacs with eggs off the side of these round things that are moving in the sky all the time. And I see them now all the time. So I get this footage of the Oliver's Castle, and I realized that after that experience, I started taking a ridiculous amount of photos, and in 3 weeks, I had taken 1,100 photos of crop circles, flying in the planes with no door. Not only no door, but you should see the seat belt. It's like a man's belt, like a little leather thing. And I remember staring at the pilot going, "No, really, where's the halter?" And he said, "That's it, sit back, enjoy." So I've got all these photos. I come home to America, and I had actually hired a film crew to go around and interview my friends in the crop circles. I didn't know what I was doing. I'd never made a movie. I have no training. It was never a thought I had, but I was so blown away by what I experienced there that I wanted to bring it home and show my friends. So I hired the film crew from the Glastonbury Symposium, and they came over and met me for a full day in the crop circles. I come home to America, I lay out a movie in record time. I had no idea what I was doing. I hired an editor on Craigslist, and we lay this movie down. And it was an hour 20, and at the end I said, "Oh, and for dessert, I've got this amazing footage of the Oliver's Castle, balls of light laying the crop circle down." So I loaded it in, movie's done, and all of a sudden I went, "Whoa, look at the hair on my arms." And I got the goosebumps. I was like, "Ooh, they're in the house. Oh my God, this is so interesting." I was just like, my whole body was wiggling. And I looked at the editor, and he said, "You look different." And I said, "Reverse the footage." He said, "Why?" I said, "Reverse the footage." So he played the Oliver's Castle footage backwards, and I said, "Slow it down." He said, "How slow?" I said, "I don't know, 30%. And we both looked at each other, and I said, "Ooh, that was weird. Do it." He said, Why? I said, "Just do it." And this is what we found.
In life we are grounded, but in our dreams we can fly. Go where we please, no need to land, and stop, we never try. Quiet your mind and just feel the breeze, 'cause in dreams we conquer mountains and land on top of the trees. Feel so free when we stopping to breathe. Every door is open, no locking, no key. Realizing I'm free, I just fly. Yeah, I just fly.
That is animated. Don't be impressed yet. That's the only animated thing in any of my movies.
August the 11th, 1996. John Whaley comes rushing in the barge inn, the central meeting point of crop circle researchers at Alton Barnes. He has an unbelievable story to tell. He had spent the night doing a night watch on top of Oliver's Castle. It was a cold and wet night, and nothing happened. He fell asleep, but was awakened by a strange sound in the early morning hours. As he got up, he saw bright balls of light rushing over a wheat field below. He grabbed his video camera and pressed record.
Want to see it again?
We've seen this footage for years. Many believe the crop circles are made by balls of light. There's also the critics who debunk the footage as darkroom trickery. For no apparent reason, I slowed the footage down and ran it backward while editing. I discovered a line of communication between the two balls of light just before the field goes down. Right before your eyes. They communicate.
Crop circles are another way that they're bringing light onto the planet to raise the vibratory rate of not only the Earth, but all of us humans on it. And wherever light shifts down or up, ignorance and darkness disappear.
Communication between the two balls of light right before the field went down. Why me? Why not the thousands of researchers that came before me that said this is fake? Or that said it's real? The way I found it was not with math or focus or studying or research. What I just told you is exactly how they gave it to me. And the editor and I just sat there staring at each other, and I said, that was weird. So I knew that there was some kind of a deeper communication that was bringing me to a place that they really wanted to let us know that they communicated and then dropped the wheat down. So I've got all kinds of scientists here and in England trying to tell me what the message is. But instead, one of the people in England wrote me a letter and said, "Oh, nice movie. Looks like you put one of my crop circles that I made on the cover. Why don't you send me a copy?" Instead of what the message says, which is what I was looking for. So I think that there's a real need for them to debunk the message, which I'm not that impressed. So when we finished the movie, I was super excited, and I finished. I said, cut, clean, let's turn off the computer. So we turned off the computer and we turned off the monitor. But the orb was still there, and the monitor, you can see there's no wires. It was turned off. It was unplugged. But the orb wanted to make itself really known, so it just stayed there on my unplugged monitor. So here's the first movie. And because I didn't know what I was doing, I did an 1.5-hour movie, and I put the communication at the very end. 2 years later, I realized all these people were so overwhelmed by the data in the movie that they missed the ending. So I did a crop circle update movie, which has it in the first 5 minutes. And people are like, why are you giving away the punchline? Well, there might be an earthquake. I want people to know. Here's my second movie. So I made the first movie, and I took it to the International UFO Congress. I had no idea. What do you do with a UFO movie? I had no idea. So I went online, and they told me the International UFO Congress Film Festival. Super exciting. So I called them up, and they said, oh, crop circles, we love those movies, but you missed the deadline by a month. And then she said, my dad loves crop circle movies. Why don't you send us one anyway? So I sent them that first movie. And the owner of the UFO event in Scottsdale called me personally, and he said, I love your movie. I'm going to throw a Tuesday lunch just to show your movie. You won't get in the film festival, but we're going to show your movie. So it was really a treat. I got down there, and they showed it on the second day. So I met all the rock stars, including Dolores Cannon, and decided, as I was walking out the door to go to this event, so excited to show it, my editor said to me, here's my camera, take it so you don't have to hire a film crew. I said, your camera? Like, right, I'm going to take that. Which end is the front? I mean, really, I was like, I'm not going to take this. And he said, take the camera, don't hire a film crew, you can do it. So I got the 3-minute lesson, got to the hotel, focused in on the TV, the fridge, the bed, the curtains. I had it down. So I started interviewing everybody, including the Queen, and I made movie number 2. And that happened within 6 months of the first movie. I was kind of nutty. I was just like, oh my God. So I went back to England in 2008 and filmed 3 more movies. I had no idea what I was doing. I was so high on mercury. I had no idea I was high on mercury. All I knew was I was psychic out of my mind. I was working with the ETs. I was getting in airplanes with a seatbelt like a shoestring. No door on my side. I would not do any of this today, gotta be honest. So this one, I took to the International UFO Congress Convention, and I won an EB award. It won Best Feature Film. I was like, oh my God, this is working. I was really surprised, so I made this movie, and I put that important communication, dropping the field down in the very beginning, and at the International UFO Congress, it won Best Feature Film and Best Music. And I'm only showing you this to say that I didn't know anything. I did no research. I didn't read anybody else's books. I only watched Janet Osabard's movies so that I could get that footage. And so it was a really interesting experience. Back I went. And that's all I did all summer long. People were like, oh, she's not even the girl in the green wellies anymore. Now she's got bare feet. So here's an interesting piece. Last year, did any of you know that there were 69 crop circles in England alone? Anybody? One person. Why? The news. Oops. So were there any anywhere else in the world? Well, we had 56 more documented in Mexico, Brazil, Argentina, Italy, Czech Republic, Iran, Slovakia, France, the Netherlands, Latvia, Poland, Macedonia, Germany, Switzerland, Norway, Belgium, the US, Denmark, and Australia. Who heard about those? Okay, now this is a bright group. Not one hand went up. What's going on here? Did the news get bought by somebody stuck on stupid? I mean, really? No press? 69 in England. That's a lot of crop circles. But we didn't get to know. So, the problem is between reality and what gets told to the people. But this is old news. So I thought that was pretty interesting that last year there were that many. And somebody at a recent talk said, can you focus on the ones in America? Yawn. So I was like, silly me. Okay, I'll go look. I was stunned. 2005 down to 2000, there were more than 20 every year in America. Did any of you know that? I didn't. Okay, well, somebody's on. So anyway, I start doing the research, but starting 2005, there were no crop circles in America till 2013. So I wrote the guy and I said, really? No crop circles? And he said, well, we didn't really get funding, and so they bailed. No mention of crop circles since 2005 on the only American website. But at least I was really surprised to see that we had that many from 2000 to 2005. So after I filmed 3 movies in 2008, I started getting uncomfortable because of these guys. Now, I don't know who they are, but I know they're not my friend. And the one day when I was interviewing a woman whose name I won't mention, because we're both pointing at each other, this helicopter, rather large and unfriendly looking, came down about 50 feet over our head and circled for 20 minutes. My hair was knotted. This thing flew and flew, and I had my camera waiting to interview her, and I'm starting to tap my foot, and I could feel my immature nature wanting to flip them the bird or the double bird. And I stayed calm, and she's going, stay calm, they're just trying to intimidate you. And I said, good job. And every time I looked up, I realized that they had something pointing at us that was 2 metal things with a red light blinking in the middle. I don't know if it was a gun or a camera. All I knew was they weren't my friend. And they weren't leaving. So finally, I gave them the money shot. I did a major back bend and a double bird. Really stupid. I'm sure it's in their locker room. Yeah, that's that stupid girl. We finally got her to do something. I wish my daughter had been there to say early on, Mom, turn the camera on them. So finally, after 20 minutes of ratting my hair and flying way too close to our heads, I turned the camera on them. 3 full circles. 3 full circles, and they flew away. Yes! Oh, God, what great footage I got. So my friend was like, I can't believe you did that. And I said, yeah, let's look at it. And I backed it up, and it was empty film until they flew away. So, whew, that was kind of nerve-wracking, but I was really glad they left until I got to my car. Oops. Well, should have put a mask over my license plate as if they didn't know who I was. But anyway, I did not enjoy that day, so 2009 was the first year I didn't go back because this I didn't care for. I'm there for a peaceful mission, and it was very discomforting. In 7707, this was a beautiful formation. We were up on the hill. We all had our cameras out, and a guy named Win Keach actually filmed this amazing flash of light that looked like lightning that went sideways. And just a few hours later, when the sun started to come up, we could see this formation. And because he got it on film, the flash, and then there was a formation, they called in the BBC, and all of us went over to Coronation Hall. All the researchers, we were all there. And while we were there, one guy didn't go. He was in this formation, but had to run out because he reported to us that 2 helicopters came over and dumped pink powder on that crop circle. I don't know what it was, but I know it's the only crop circle I didn't go in all summer. Now, I'm only pointing these things out not to say, oh, we have enemies, but just to say this is what we deal with. And I think because the military can't explain it, can't stop it, can't do anything about it, they want to try and get us from knowing anything because they know we are delving deep. So in 2001 and 2002, we had 2 really amazing formations. This is one of the doubles. You can see it looks relatively like a human face. And this one up here is a really interesting one because it was a mirror reflection of a message that we sent into deep space in 1974. SETI, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, sent a message into deep space from the Arecibo radio telescope in 1974. And they're in Puerto Rico. They've got this big, huge dish. They transmitted an encoded message that was aimed toward the globular star cluster M13, which was about 25,000 light years away, and consisted of 300,000 stars. It contained information about our planet, such as the number of humans, our basic body type, scientific elements, these things. And we sent it out into deep space in a binary code, in a language they probably don't understand, we thought, but we still sent it out there. In August 2001, that double crop circle came back to us in Chilbolton. Now, the interesting thing about both these formations, these doubles, 2001 and 2, was they didn't just drop it in a field. They laid them in fields that had a line of telecommunication towers. Anybody listening? Their message wasn't just for the few of us that went in the field. They laid these 2 very important double formations in a field that had communication towers, hoping that we would spread the word far and wide. So this is the message we sent out in 1974. It had really specific information, and they did it in decimals, binary code. It had the atomic numbers for hydrogen, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, phosphorus. The next group of binary numbers were the formulas for sugar and the basic nucleotides of DNA. They had the double helix, a kind of an image of a human with a little small head, normal little body. And then they also had a basic height, population, and then they also had a sketching binary of our solar system layout. They also did at the very bottom the Arecibo telescope, the shape of it. The interesting thing about the formation that came down in the field was it was almost a mirror image, but it had 9 very apparent changes. The biggest one, in my opinion, is this guy. Hello? Right? I don't look like that, do you? So this one, the highlighted difference was not only that it was an alien instead of a human, but they added the element silicon, which has become extremely important since 2001. So they also changed the number of nucleotides. They changed the population value. They changed the solar system information because they were telling us what they were made of, how they existed. And at the very bottom, they showed us what their telecommunication tower looked like, which is nothing like ours. So they really gave us a lot of information, and they placed it where they hoped we would share it with other people. The face, I mean, from any angle, it's a face, right? So the following year, we got the alien face and the disc. Now this one, I'm sure all of us remember that. And again, the newspaper spread it across the world, and we were all excited. And then 2 days later, I think it was a hot air balloon or something. But they basically said, go back to sleep. The amazing thing about this one was that it was a readable binary code. Zeros and ones in brittle wheat, without a mistake. Without a mistake. And the message was deciphered. Again, it was near transmitting towers, but Paul Vigay deciphered the coded message to be ASCII, and he decoded specific words and letters. Some were caps, some were small, but the message, in my opinion, 6 months after 9/11, 8 months maybe, after 9/11, beware the bearers of false gifts and their broken promises. Much pain, but still time. Believe there is good out there. We oppose deception. Conduit closing. That's kind of heavy. Kind of real heavy to me. So I think those two double formations a year apart, 8 miles apart, both next to these lines of telecommunication towers, this is not accidental. To me, this is very intentional. The messages are very clear. We are here. We hear your messages. We know who you are, your solar system. We know what you're made of. This is what we're made of. And we were shocked when that message came back. This was another favorite. I was in this one morning, noon, and night. And I guess I was one of the only people that flew over it before the farmer decided to plow 2 big lines right through the center of the crop circle and wreck it, thinking that we wouldn't come back in. So, I mean, this thing was so beautiful that the day I flew, I asked my friend, go in the center and wave at me. So that's Nick. Hi, Nick. This thing was so beautiful until the farmer attacked it. Now, if the farmer attacked it and locked down his field, you'd think that'd be it. But the Circlemakers got really sick of this farmer, so they just gave him a gift. And I looked at this picture, and I said, oh, those are just silly squiggles. That's nothing. That's human-made. Those are just silly little squiggles. They're just ridiculous. And then I went in the formation at night, and I was alone. These are things I wouldn't do today, but I was high on mercury. So I went in the crop circle at night in a skirt and sandals, and I thought I'd even go in a back way that nobody had gone. So I'm like kind of waddling through, and I get in the middle, I'm like, wow, this is cool. It's like dark, and I'm all alone. And all of a sudden, I felt something tickle my leg, and I looked down, and I was covered with very large spiders. They were black with a white body, and they were big. And there were lots of them, and they were all over my clothes. Because I'd come in the back way, not the way that people walk, I thought I'd do something really unique. And I was covered with spiders. I was by myself thinking, this is where I'm going to die. So I slowly took my skirt off and threw my shirt down. I was just standing there going, this is really interesting. Why am I so calm? And I shook my skirt, and they all ran off. And then I shook my shirt, and they all went away. And I put my clothes on, and I was like, God, what's wrong with me? I am so calm. That's not something girls do. So the farmer, the next morning, I decided to go and get some close-ups. And this was not crappy squiggle. This is the most mind-boggling interior. Every single area was just meticulous. And if you see wheat out of place, you'll notice that if you see like a little something here, it's because a human walked in it. It was meticulous inside. I have 9 photos. I mean, every inch of it, a star. Do you remember it just looked like a sloppy squiggle? I'd like to see people do that in the darkness of night. Or that. Do you notice there's a flower there? This was one of my favorites. They laid down the whole field and left a flower. Human damage, but beautiful little circle. And you remember this is the response to the farmer. Yeah, you think you can mow our field down? Take that. Everything was just beautiful. Really tidy. Look at that corner. So an interesting thing with some of the more advanced researchers, when we start to peel the layers of the corners where the wheat meets, they have different weaves. And some people feel that they have a talent to read the weaves as different messages. If they crisscross, if they angle, if they go straight, they believe that those are different messages. Fantastic. This one looks like somebody tried to comb their bald head. But what I'm saying is that this is really brittle wheat. How do they do this without breaking it? There wasn't a broken stem on that bald head. So people started to say, oh, you're so etheric with your movies, you need to start interviewing the debunkers. And I was like, yeah, next life, maybe. They said, well, at least interview the farmers. I'm checking my heart, and they're going, don't waste your time. But I have to appease humans every now and then, so I said, okay, I'm going to call the farmer that does more mowing down of crop circles than anyone else. So I drive out, and he's there, and he says, hey, mate, I've got 20 minutes there. So I said, great, love your tractor, or whatever that thing's called. Great backdrop. So I pull out my tripod. Now this photo, you can't really tell, but I set up the tripod and went to put the camera on, and it wouldn't go on the tripod. It wouldn't go on front, back, left, right, my camera. I'm surprised I turned my back, because it was balanced on top of the tripod, and you know you don't do that. So the camera was totally fighting me, but I was like, okay, I just rammed it on and kind of stepped away really fast and jumped back. So I'm getting the mics. I set up the mics, and you can barely see, but at the time I had gloves on. I was living in gloves and Band-Aids. So I set up the mics, and neither one of them would work. They just said, not gonna happen. Farmer's looking at me, hey mate, I'm down to 12 minutes there. So I had to hurry up, and 16 batteries with gloves and Band-Aids. That was fun. So I'm going as fast as I can. I got all new batteries. Okay, here we go. Neither mic would work. Camera's just hanging on the edge. So I said to the farmer, oh, looks like we're down to 7 minutes there. So I said, tell you what, let's just go inside your barn. Skip the outside, beautiful sunlight. I'll use the interior mic on the camera. I will hold it on my knee as a tripod. Let's go in the barn. He said, nope, can't go in there. And I said, why? Well, we just sprayed in there. I said, what'd you spray? Isn't that where the food goes? Yeah, we just sprayed the wheat too. Now, this is before all of us knew about GMOs and Monsanto. So I was like, well, what did you put on the weed and in the barn that you wouldn't walk in? And guess what he said? Oh, I'm out of time. So he drove away. Now, I had a lady friend there that was watching me do all this, and she just looked at me, and I said, I know my gear. And I'm telling you, I shouldn't have even tried to do this, but I was trying to appease you. So tell everybody I did my best. And so he drives away. And all of a sudden, the hair went up on my arm, and I went, uh-oh, I think I just got a message. She said, what? I said, watch this. And the camera went right on the tripod, effortless. Lockdown. Put on the mics again, bang, they both worked perfectly. But they wouldn't do it while he was there. So I listen. I don't even pretend to listen to what people want. I'm sorry. I do what they tell me. So here's a beautiful one that Julia said at Stonehenge. Were you in that one? Yeah, beautiful. The Fibonacci sequence. Flawless. Not only the flawless Fibonacci sequence, but it happened in broad daylight in less than 15 minutes. Verified by the guard of Stonehenge, who circles the exterior, circled the perimeter every 15 minutes. It wasn't there, and then it was. And everybody that was at Stonehenge, it was kind of a midday, it looks like there's not many people, but there's usually lots. They all went running across and left Stonehenge and went into this brand new crop circle. The pilot, that's the regular pilot that flies over Stonehenge, said that he had taken a scientist out. They went over Stonehenge. There was no crop circle. When he came back on the return, 15 minutes less or less, there was this flawless Fibonacci sequence. That's impressive. Middle of the day, pilot, guards, witnesses. Anybody recognize the pi, P-I, flawless sacred geometric mathematics? This was at Barbary Castle. And that's Barbary Castle up there, sacred site. Sitting on a ley line. Barbary, just an absolutely beautiful crop circle. I went in it when it was green. I was still there when it was brown. And I was in there one day with my movie camera. This girl comes in with her horse, and I said, "Yo, not in a crop circle." She says, "I own the land, mate." So I had to let her and her dog gallop around. Binary, DNA. Binary, anyone? Time tunnels? How about the ammonite? Symbol of life? And if that one's not delicate enough, how about that one? Now, when it's yellow, you're in canola. Canola is about an inch around, extremely brittle, big hollow canola. And they're so tall that it's like a tangled web to walk through. Really hard to get through. Now, when you realize how thin these little lines are in canola, that's a miracle right there. And look how perfect until people walk through it. My favorite center ever. This particular crop circle happened in Avebury Manor. I got up at 6:30 in the morning with that same boyfriend, and we went into this crop circle. There were, I think, 60 circles, and each one had a stellar centerpiece. I'm sorry, dark of night, 60 of these, all different. To me, I see like an Indian teepee, land with all twisted and braided and woven, and nothing was broken. Really amazing, this one. How about this center? Braided basket, they called it. Brittle July wheat. Here's another center, and that was from the Avebury one where the farmer thought he'd outsmart the Circlemakers. Now in 2009, we had a totally freak season, and I'm going to give you the punchline in advance. No, I won't. Normally we get binary codes, we get sacred geometry, but this year we had 6 or 7 birds and 6 or 7 fish, dragonfly, ancient sea creatures. 8 months later, BP oil spill. Murdered millions of birds, millions of fish, many dragonflies. What were they telling us? Why were they drawing our attention to the birds and the fish? Swirling dolphins? Trout, anyone? Now this dragonfly, on first glance, is quite nice, and when you look closer, it has veins. Veins in the wings. Come on. I mean, how could you not believe that this is real? The veins in the wings took me out. Owl. Is it a phoenix? Or is this a phoenix? That's a thunderbird. Hummingbird. Nazca line, anyone? Does this remind you of the Nazca hummingbird? That's a crop circle. Same summer. And then 8 months later, BP happened. Need I say more? In my opinion, that's a pretty clear message. That's a pretty clear warning. After 9/11, beware the bearers of false gifts and their broken promises. They are talking to us. My first movie is called The Wake Up Call. Anybody listening? I mean, it's what's going on. We have so many amazing crop circles. They're not yelling. They're giving it to us in a language that we all understand. Art, pictograms. And if we don't believe that, give the men binary codes. Give the scientists binary codes. Give them sacred geometry for the mathematicians. We have something for everyone. This looks like nothing. And it was a really rainy day, so all the researchers were staying at the research center. They were like, we're not going there. And so I was such an addict that I went in and looked closer, and sure enough, there was some silver matter in the middle of that crop circle. And I went back to the research center, and they said, what was it like over there? And I said, oh, it was the silver stuff. And he's like, you're kidding. You got to go back. Here's a spoon and a baggie. Go get me some. I was like, yeah, right, in this rain. And he said, you're Patty Greer. Go back there and get me some. So, of course, I did. I never heard what they figured out it was. Oh, that was my first big present. They put me on the cover of UFO magazine. My movies started really getting out, which was lovely. So last year in 2012, I realized that I had made a very, very bad judgment in choosing my movie distributors. And when they weren't paying me anything for all my movie sales, I started making some noise and complaining, so they thought they'd show me. And all 4 of my movies are officially hidden from the public all year. So I was kind of beside myself, trying to figure out, great, what do I do with 4 hidden movies and a contract that I shouldn't have done? So I stayed home last year in 2012. I had a friend come up to the house, and she said, oh, God, I've got to show you this artist. His work is so amazing. So she opens this up, and I started hyperventilating. His name is Ariel Ali. And all of his work is in these extreme colors. And when I got to the second picture, I started hyperventilating. And my friend was like, what's going on with you? And I said, oh, my God, in my regression, I remember where they took me. They took me to a place extremely colorful. It was underwater. The colors were ultraviolet, ultra pink, ultra blue. And where they took me was this thing that looked like a crystal castle. This is last summer in June 2012. This is 10:30 at night in Colorado, which is 5 in the morning in England. I'm crying over this photo because I said, who is this artist? I have got to ask him where they took me, because this is definitely it. This is where they took me, I'm sure. And I'm tearing, and I'm just a wreck, because it took me back. I wake up in the morning and I open up my computer, and the cropcircleconnector.com has a wonderful archive. Cropcircleconnector.com has a great archive of all the crop circles, and for like 25 pounds a year, you can look at the archives of the last 30 years. So because I'm a member, they send me an email every day of the crop circles that happen. And so while I was remembering the Crystal Castle at 10:30 at night in England and having this hyperventilating memory, I woke up the next morning and realized what the Circlemakers were doing while I slept. This was the formation that happened that night. So I get up in the morning and I open it up, and there's the gosh darn Crystal Castle with drips below. It's underwater. It's a crystal castle. There's 5 spires and a thing on top. And I'm crying again, and my friend comes down from the guest room, and she's like, what's going on with you? And I said, look. And she says, oh my God, it's the Crystal Castle. I said, yeah. They heard me. They acknowledged that I remembered where they took me. And I'm just, totally into the holy crap mode. This is like really heavy. And so I went on the Crop Circle Connector, looking at all the crop circles last summer, 69 of them. Every single one was a circle with something, but this one had no circle. I said, well, isn't this interesting? It's the only one all summer that has no circle. This is definitely a love note from the Circlemakers, so I'm all out of my mind, really excited about it. And the next day, isn't that beautiful? You can see the size of it because there's people. Most crop circles are acres of flawlessly laid wheat. So I'm totally blown away by this thing with no circle, and that I'm telling myself, but it doesn't matter to anybody else, that I thought it was a message to me. And the next morning I woke up, and they put a goddess in the circle. I'm totally going, off. So I need to move quickly because I don't want to run out of time. Then, I think it was a week or so later, the goddess opened her arms. Pretty cool. So that was last summer, which is really quite amazing. But a story, and here's Ariel Ali. I called him on the phone. I said, tell me where that place was, because the Circlemakers actually acknowledged. And he said, it's the Library of Illumination, the Akashic Records Library. And then he did a sketch of me called A Soul Portrait with the castle and the crop circle. Isn't that amazing? He did the little alien. Yeah, he did the artwork, but I had the body. So I start doing Night Watch. Now here's the most interesting story of all time, and I'm going to try and get to it before this ends. And I'm really hoping that this is a story Dolores hasn't heard yet. If so, I win a prize of a smile. So I'm doing Night Watch, and I am up on the hill, again, by myself with a bunch of random cows. You don't do that at night unless you're high on mercury. So I'm up there with my stupid camera, and I'm taking all these photos. And I'm seeing these orange balls of light coming toward me. At first, they're just little white ones. They're kind of at a distance. And then they get closer. And I'm going, those aren't orbs. That's an orb. What are those? And what is that weird little jag in them? So I continue taking photos, and now there's a really bright one with colors around the edges. And then they start showing up with these little V portion. And sure enough, the ball starts to turn, and there's a doorway, or an open mouth, whatever you want to call Mr. Pac-Man. But as this thing turned, this doorway moved in different ways. In 2010, 2 years after I took this, I went to England, and I was trying not to make a movie. I had done... Oh, stop! Stop! Stop. In 2010, when I went to England with my new boyfriend, he knew that I had made 4 movies and that my distributors had dishonored me financially, and I was done making movies. I wanted to leave the camera home. He said, no, we'll bring it. It'll be fun. And I said, no, you don't understand. They will make me make a movie. And he said, oh, don't be silly. And I said, do you remember when you showed me your arm? Yeah. I really don't want to make another movie. Let's leave the camera home. But of course, he threw it on his back because I had this great pack for the camera, and off we went. So I am at the Silent Circle Research Center first thing in the morning, and these 2 guys fall out of their van, and I'm watching, and I'm like, whoa, drunk a little early. They weren't drunk. They had just had the most amazing sighting. So I walked up, and I said, are you guys okay? And he could barely look up. He said, oh, what we saw last night. Honey, get them coffee. So they sat with us, and the story they told totally took me out. These 2 guys had been up on the hill. They were awakened by some other people that had seen orange balls of light over East Field. They were French. And then these 2 guys said they went down the hill, sat at the night watch place. Not only did they see the orange balls of light, but they saw illuminated light beings with arms, legs, and a head come out of the ball of light out a doorway. I'm like, oh my God, I've got photos of the doorway. So I sent these photos to them. Actually, it was later. But I said, I'm really trying not to make a movie, but can I interview you behind the church over there? So I interviewed them, and then I interviewed the French people. The next day, I went off to a wedding, and everywhere we went, we interviewed some kids in a crop circle hours away. A little 5-year-old girl looks into the camera in Dutch, says something, and the mom narrates, translates. She doesn't want to talk about this crop circle. She wants to talk about the one we were in East Field the other day where she saw orange balls of light. I look over at my boyfriend. He's like, I said, I told you this is going to happen. He was like, I thought you were kidding. I said, no. So this little child looks into the camera, and she talks, and the mom said, yeah, she said that the Circlemakers told her that the circle wasn't done yet. They're going to make it bigger. A 5-year-old. We get to the wedding that night, and at the end of the wedding, I meet Eddie from Holland, who does automatic writing. And I said, oh, do you have anything to show me? Sure enough, he had his book at a wedding in his pocket, slaps it, opens it up, and it said, orange, yes. And it had a sketch of the crop circle with added elements. He said, yeah, I was in this crop circle the other day, and the Circlemakers told me, it's not done yet. I get home to America, I had 4 stories that were the same story. So I'll give you just a little taste. I wish I had more time. Just a little taste of this movie and what happened.
The elders were correct. As the last remnants of greed and corruption slip away, humanity has realigned with the higher dimensions. Illumined beings are presenting themselves, and many of us are seeing them. When the sun sets over there, it becomes the perfect time for the devoted night watchers to climb the hills, find our perch, and set up our cameras. This is no coincidence. Most people are so stunned when they have a sighting that they forget to lift their camera. It was a beautiful sunset over Wiltshire, England, and there was an eerie feeling in the wheat that night. You could almost taste it. I was up on the hill, and there were a few other random people that I didn't know, along with the cows, which are always there. We saw groups of 2, 3, 4, and sometimes 5 at a time flying together. The balls of light were distinctly different from one another, and we usually saw 3 different colored groups traveling together. One type was gold in color, and the other balls were dark orange. Often there was more than one of the darker orange balls, and the additional ones usually lagged behind the main group of 3 lights. There was a very bright one that flew with the group, but always at a distance from the gold and orange balls. The bright one would appear to be the ball of light that the people referred to in the interviews you just saw. The bright one was distinctly different in appearance, which is clearly visible in the photos. They lit up like bright lights at a distance, except that they moved through the sky and would change direction in unpredictable ways. We could see the balls of light clearly with our eyes in the darkness. They moved slowly, and it was difficult to tell their size or their distance from us. We noticed some unusual markings on the balls that looked like a V on the outer edge. Then the balls spun around and showed us something really spectacular. I remember minimizing the experience at the time. I almost believed they were military flares in the night sky over Wiltshire. These documentations are happening all over the world. There's no Photoshop and no games being played here. These appear to be real balls of light that are appearing over and around East Field in Wiltshire, England, and many people have seen them.
I so want to give you the rest of the interviews, but I'm running out of time. What I need to tell you is that I started making the movie, and I didn't remember that I had these ball of light photos. So I contacted a lady in Australia, Yvonne, and I'm just going to wail through her photos because we only have a couple minutes. This is Yvonne and her friends. This is my favorite friend. There is a being and chakras, and most people will say, oh, lens flare, so she gave us this one. And if you're still going, lens flare, there you go. Now that's a being with chakras. That's like one of the most beautiful ones I've seen. And here's she, oh, All right, this is another really incredible one, the red domes. We haven't seen them, ever. I've never seen anybody present the red domes. And if somebody says lens flare, well, she'll put them over the railing, and then they're next to her head. But I got 500 photos from her, not realizing that I had the photos of the orange balls of light very quickly. In Australia, do you remember last year, a couple years ago, they had the horrific fires? Here's a burned orb. There's a burned orb. Burned orbs. These things are living. If a fire affects orbs, these things are living. So Yvonne, when I finished the movie, I sent it to her, and all her friends showed up. The orbs, her friends. So the interesting thing about this story is that I finished the movie with 118 of Yvonne's photos, and I hit, I had to force myself to edit because I was done paying editors. So I did the whole thing myself. I was really proud. I got to the end. I was like, yeah, I did it. And I hit save, and all of a sudden, instead of saving, it deleted 118 photos of Yvonne's. I was in tears. Immediately, of course, I attacked myself and said, why did I even try and do this? I'm not an editor. So I had to, grab the hook, pull myself away from the computer, go to sleep, and pretend it was a bad dream. Got up in the morning, 118 photos were missing. When I stopped crying, I realized that I had those photos from 2 years earlier with the orange balls of light and the weird black thing, and all of a sudden I went, oh my God, they were talking about a doorway. So I pulled up those photos and realized I had the real photos. I was just practicing with Yvonne's 500 photos. So I finished the movie with my photos, the orange balls of light, the real ones, not the English orbs. Not the Australian orbs. These were the real English balls of light that in my opinion, probably made the crop circles for years. So I finished the movie with the real photos that are in the movie now, called 4 Stories, 1 Event, Other Worlds. And I sent the movie to all those people, Holland, Belgium, England, and the other people were from Belgium with the little children. And all of them wrote me back the next morning, because they're 9 hours ahead, and they said, oh my God, those are them. Where did you get the photos? Were you there that night? I said, no, I'm really glad they're the right things that you saw. So when Igor, the guy that I interviewed, said, I watched the movie the first time, all I could do was laugh because I looked so awkward. I was in shock. But after I watched the movie the second time, I remembered what happened when you woke me up at the camper van. I remembered the dream I had. I said, what dream? He said, well, after you woke me up, and I said, Igor, I didn't meet you at the camper van. I met you at the silent circle when you fell out of your van. No, you woke me up. I remember. And I said, okay, tell me about the dream. He said, they showed me how they go in and out of the world. And I said, tell me. He said, they put their arms up like those dancers, those whirling dervishes, and they spin, and they disappear. I was like, wow, that's heavy. So the guy that owned the Silent Circle, when I was finishing the movie, said to me, you have filmed the most intense story that's ever been told in the crop circles, not only balls of light, but balls of light with illuminated light beings in them. He said, you need to meet this girl who also saw them. She was across the meadow on the hill. Actually, she was on top of Silbury Hill. Illegal, but she was up there with 2 guys. Now, she has seen the balls of light before, so she wasn't in a panic, but the guy that owned the Silent Circle kept saying, you've got to get her interview because she saw them also. So he got her permission to talk to me, and I had her Skype, her email, her phone number. She wouldn't talk to me. She would not talk to me. So finally, I finished the movie. I printed and sent it off. I was done. I gave up on her. Bang, she Skypes me the next day. And she says, let's talk. I said, how did you know I just finished the movie, and why wouldn't you talk to me? She said, I have 3 children. That's why. And I said, oh, okay. Why are you calling me now? And she said, because I need to tell you what happened. And I said, tell me, what happened? She was standing up with her mate and another guy on Silbury Hill, illegal. And they saw this cloud mist come over toward them, and these orange balls of light drop down. And she said, all of a sudden, it was the weirdest thing. There were all these little light beings with arms, legs, and a head, and they were completely around the circle of Silbury Hill. There were lots of them. They were everywhere. And she said, when we got up there, it was me, my mate, and another guy, and there were these teenagers that were sitting behind us, partying, whatever. But when the light beings showed up, she said, I turned around, and these teens were laid out flat, out cold, under something that looked like a big plastic tarp. She said they were silenced, and they were under this big plastic-looking tarp that they didn't bring. Something laid over them and blocked them from this experience. She said, I could hear my mate's knees banging. She said, I just kept holding their hands tight and saying, stay calm, stay calm. And then she said, without knowing anything about the interviews I did, she said, and all of a sudden, they put their arms up in the air, and you know those whirling dervishes? They started spinning and disappeared. I'm convinced. I am totally convinced that this is very real. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. I've got a booth with 5 movies. I hope you'll come visit. They asked if I wanted to do a Q&A, but I needed to tell you all this. Thank you. Thank you.